Yo, what is going on, everyone? My name is Nick, or the Notorious Fantasy, and in today's video, we're going to be talking about my week number 6 quarterback start or sit decisions for fantasy football in 2021. Inside today's video, we're going to be going in depth into every single matchup from Thursday Night Football all the way until Monday Night Football, and I'll be telling you guys whether I believe you should start or sit the quarterbacks in every single matchup. But before we get on into things, I would like to ask, if you are new to the channel and you do end up enjoying today's video, to please make sure that you do hit that subscribe button down below. Not only is it free, I put out content every single day to help you guys win your 2021 fantasy football championship. And while you're down there, whether you are new to the channel or not, make sure you hit that like button down below to help boost this video up the algorithm so that more beautiful people like yourself can see today's video. I'd also like to ask, if you guys are on Twitter and would like to follow me on there, to please do so at NotoriousFNTSY. The link to my Twitter is also down below in the video description. So without further ado, let's get into my week number 6 quarterback start or sit decisions. We begin with Thursday Night Football tonight between the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Philadelphia Eagles in Philadelphia. In this game, I love both of the quarterbacks in this matchup. Tom Brady has just been on a complete and utter tear thus far this season. It doesn't matter when Gronk is in the game. It doesn't matter if any of the wide receivers are hurt or on the COVID list. It does not matter, because Tampa Bay Tom Brady is going to put up a huge game on Thursday Night Football up against the Philadelphia Eagles. This guy really does have the potential to be the #1 quarterback every single week, and that is a very strange thing to say about a quarterback that doesn't run the ball at all. But the thing about Tom Brady is he doesn't even need those rushing yards, because he's throwing so many touchdowns, so many yards every single game, and he never really makes a bad play. He doesn't really cause interceptions. He's not throwing interceptions, which just helps him be so great in fantasy football, whereas a majority of quarterbacks in fantasy football, they need that rushing upside to be able to take them over the edge to potentially be the #1 quarterback on the week. That could be said about Jalen Hurts. Now, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers pass defense is fucking atrocious this season. Everyone going into this season was doing the gawk gawk special for the Buccaneers defense, and I understand, right? They shut down Patrick Mahomes in the Super Bowl. They were shutting down all types of offenses last season, so everyone expected the Bucs defense to be very good up against the pass as well as up against the run this year, and that just simply has not been the case. So I believe Jalen Hurts has the opportunity to have a very big spot here. I love this game tonight. This is going to be a very fun game to watch. Next up, we move to the London game, baby. The Dolphins at the Jacksonville Jaguars. In this one, I am comfortable playing Trevor Lawrence. Now, I do think that the Dolphins defense is going to play much better in this game, but at the end of the day, I would not be surprised if Trevor Lawrence had a very solid showing, considering he has really started to, at least recently, start to actually use his legs. He starts to actually run the ball, which gives him an edge up in fantasy football. If he continues to run the ball more, those are just free points. It's so much easier to get points with running the ball for a quarterback when compared to throwing the ball. So I think Trevor Lawrence is going to have the potential to have a big spot here, and it is entirely possible that Tua Tagovailoa comes back this week, and maybe it's a week too early and he plays like complete and utter shit, and then the Jaguars just roll the Dolphins. And if that is the case, typically when the Dolphins offense isn't able to really get anything going, then the Dolphins defense just taps out, and then the other offense is able to just throw the ball on him, run the ball on him like it's nothing, because the Dolphins defense just gives up. So I like Trevor Lawrence in this game, but I wouldn't tell you that I loved him. I wasn't ultra confident in him because of the fact that the Dolphins defense may actually wake up in this game because Tua is actually healthy, and maybe Tua will make this game competitive. And if Tua is able to make the game competitive, then typically the Dolphins defense actually stays awake, they stay ready, and they actually have a solid game. So I like Trevor Lawrence, but he is not in the top 12 conversation for me on the week. For Tua, it's his first game back, so I don't want to be 100% confident that he's going to have a huge spot here. If you're down tremendous at quarterback, there's definitely worse quarterback pickups on the week than Tua, but he would not be one of those guys that I'm really looking to start on the week. Now on to the main Sunday slate. We begin with the Kansas City Chiefs at the Washington Football Team. These are two defenses that suck complete and utter donkey cock up against the pass, so you should not be surprised at all if this is a very high-scoring back-and-forth game. Patrick Mahomes hasn't looked amazing this season. Now, again, that doesn't mean that Patrick Mahomes looks like a garbage quarterback, right? He's still one of the best quarterbacks in all of the National Football League. The offensive line doesn't look amazing. The defense there in Kansas City is definitely terrible, but if both of these defenses aren't very good up against the pass, then that could lead to a very high-scoring back-and-forth slinging affair between Patrick Mahomes and Taylor Heineke. So I like both of them on the week. I do understand that Heineke had the worst game of the season last week, but I do believe he has a bounce back spot here. And again, I do think there's going to be a high scoring back and forth affair between two relatively solid offenses. Obviously, the Chiefs have a great offense, but it doesn't work too well when they're playing up against a strong defense. But the Washington football team defense isn't very strong. So I like Pat Mahomes. I like Taylor Heineke. I actually love Taylor Heineke this week, as he is a part of the video that I made last night called Must Start Players and Must Sit Players. Taylor Heineke was a must start player on the week. I love this matchup up against the Kansas City Chiefs. Next up, we got the LA Rams at the New York Football Giants. This is a game where Daniel Jones, I assume, is going to play, but even if he does end up playing, I'm just not 100% confident in dubbing him as a start in this matchup coming off of the concussion, and he wasn't playing all that great in that game up against the Dallas Cowboys before he ended up getting hurt, so Daniel Jones will be a sit for me on the week. I just don't love this matchup up against the Rams defense for Danny Dimes. For the Rams, I like Matthew Stafford. I like Matthew Stafford every single game. Last week up against the Seattle Seahawks, I was surprised that Matthew Stafford honestly didn't have a much bigger game in that matchup, but maybe he makes up for it this week up against the New York Football Giants. Next up, we got the Houston Texans at the Indianapolis Colts, and what a choke it was for the Indianapolis Colts. The Colts were up big. They were up huge on the Baltimore Ravens on Monday Night Football, and they somehow ended up choking it away. Carson Wentz, though, looked like maybe vintage Carson Wentz. Now, vintage Carson Wentz, how long ago was that? Just a couple of years ago, but back before Carson Wentz basically looked like everything fucking fell apart, and he had no idea how to play football. He was looking like the old Carson Wentz, maybe the MVP potential Carson Wentz before he ended up getting hurt. So he was looking really good. This week, he goes up against the Houston Texans. This could easily be a bloodbath game for the Indianapolis Colts. I expect them to put up a big spot here. But Nick, Mac Jones didn't look that great up against the Texans last week. Well, there's a big difference, in my opinion, between a rookie quarterback in Mac Jones and Carson Wentz. So I think Carson Wentz should be in for a big spot this week. Davis Mills is going to be a sit for me. I mean, Davis Mills actually looked really good last week, so congratulations to Davis Mills. The guy isn't a complete and utter fucking dumpster fire at the quarterback position, but is he a guy that you want to be starting in fantasy football? Of course not. Next up, we got the Cincinnati Bengals at the Detroit Lions. Joe Burrow gets that throat contusion in that game. He ends up playing through it. The kicker kicks the ball. Eric McPherson, the motherfucker, is celebrating like they just won the Super Bowl, and in reality, the ball fucking soars to the left of the goalpost, wide left, and that was probably one of the craziest games I have seen all year. Not because it was this interesting where you're just glued to your seat, but it's just crazy how many times you could potentially miss a field goal in a game, but it is what it is. The Bengals end up coming out with the L up against the Packers, but they played quite well. Joe Burrow going up against the Detroit Lions defense with T. Higgins healthy, with Jamar Chase, with Tyler Boyd. This is going to be a ravaging of the Detroit Lions defense. I expect Joe Burrow to have a huge spot. Jared Goff is going to be a sit for me. You are going to have to really hope that Jared Goff is able to pull this team out from the depths of an ass whooping in this matchup, and if that is the case, maybe he's able to muster up a fantasy relevant week, but again, how often do you want to be starting Jared Goff? The answer is never. Next up, we got the Green Bay Packers at the Chicago Bears in Chicago. In this matchup, I like Aaron Rodgers. The other quarterback in the game, Justin Fields, I just have zero confidence in. Now, does that mean that I think Justin Fields is a shitty quarterback? Of course not. I think Justin Fields is going to have a solid career in Chicago, but right now, it feels as though Bill Lazor and this offense is just trying to baby Justin Fields. The main game plan for Justin Fields' team, the Chicago Bears, appears to be to just run the ball, to mitigate the amount of mistakes that Justin Fields could make, and hope that the defense wakes up and plays quite well in order for them to just win the game by running the ball, making sure that Justin Fields throws the ball, makes some nice throws, but he doesn't fuck the game up by causing a costly interception or anything. And sure, that works for the NFL, and sure, that might work for the Chicago Bears. In this game up against the Packers, I highly doubt that is going to work. I think Justin Fields will have to throw the ball more, but right now it just feels as though Bill Lazor or Matt Nagy, whoever would be calling the plays in any given game. Now, right now, it is Bill Lazor, but it was the same case with Matt Nagy. They are really kind of handcuffing the potential of Justin Fields. They are basically utilizing a strategy to try to not lose the game instead of trying to win the game, because they're just playing so safe by running the ball, and it has worked a decent amount. So again, I'm not saying that's a shitty strategy, but it does hurt when you have Justin Fields on your fantasy team because they are not letting him cook it up. Again, Aaron Rodgers is a must start every single week. I wouldn't be surprised surprised if he had a huge spot here up against the Chicago Bears defense, who, while I said that Bill Lazor, this team, they're trying to revolve around, trusting the defense, but the defense there in Chicago hasn't been as good as it has been in years past. Next up, we got the LA Chargers at the Baltimore Ravens in what will be the biggest game of the week. What is the most interesting game of the week? And to me, a lot of people I feel as though are going to be on the LA Chargers. A lot of people are going to be on the Baltimore Ravens, but in my opinion, this game is a complete and utter fucking coin flip. I genuinely have no idea who is going to win this game, and that makes it ever more interesting. Lamar Jackson crawls from deep down in the game, fights his way back into the game to beat the Indianapolis Colts in prime time on Monday Night Football. A great showing out of Lamar Jackson. It just went to show that Lamar Jackson doesn't have to rush the ball for 80, 90, 100, 110 yards every single fucking game for them to win the football game. He was able to get in the pocket and cook it up to Mr. Mark Andrews, to Hollywood Brown, to Sammy Watkins until he ended up getting hurt. So that was a very solid showing out of Lamar Jackson. I think he has a great spot here up against the Chargers. The Chargers also crawled back in their game last week up against the Cleveland Browns. They end up winning. Justin Herbert, the pervert, has looked amazing thus far this season. This should be a very high-scoring back-and-forth affair, so I love Herbert, and I love Lamar Jackson in this matchup. Next up, we got the Minnesota Vikings at the Carolina Panthers. In this one, I like Mr. You Like That, Kirk Cousins, quarterback of the Minnesota Vikings. I also want to be starting Mr. Mano Man Sam, quarterback of the Carolina Panthers. Now, I know some people are starting to sour a little bit on Kirk Cousins because, oh man, the Vikings offense hasn't looked that good over the last 2 weeks, Nick. What's happening? And I agree that the offense hasn't looked great over the last 2 weeks, but I believe this is a game where both teams are going to wake up. The Panthers didn't look all that great last week up against the Eagles. I expect both of these teams to wake up and have a much higher scoring game, so I like Kirk Cousins as well as Sam Darnold in this game. Christian McCaffrey is also back, which should help out Sam Darnold a decent amount. Kirk Cousins also should be getting Dalvin Cook back, but I mean, Alexander Mattison basically is Dalvin Cook now. Oh, man, Nick, that's fucked up, man. Dalvin Cook's better than Alexander Mattison. And I understand, right? He is, but Alexander Mattison fits the role perfectly where it almost seems as though Dalvin Cook was never even gone. But I do like Kirk Cousins and Sam Darnold in this matchup, and I do believe this is going to be a bigger scoring game than a lot of people would believe. Next up, we got the Arizona Cardinals at the Cleveland Browns. In this one, I like Kyler Murray, and I do not like Baker Mayfield. Now, it appears that Baker Mayfield's left labrum is clearly impacting him. He doesn't look like shit out there, right? He doesn't look like he has no idea how to throw the pigskin, but he doesn't look like the Baker from prior to the injury. Going up against the Arizona Cardinals defense, who has played very well thus far this season, with a Cleveland Browns team who loves to run the ball. Now, again, I've talked about this in the offseason. I talked about it in last offseason. I've talked about it during last season. I talk about it during this season. The thing about Baker Mayfield is not necessarily that he's a bad quarterback. He's actually a very solid quarterback. But what the Browns are asking of Baker Mayfield is different to what the Cardinals are asking of Kyler Murray. The Cardinals, Cliff Kingsbury, they want Kyler Murray to go out there and throw some fucking missiles. They want Kyler Murray to go out there and juke out a defender and run his way into the end zone. Hit a defender, hit a DB with the spin move. That's what Cliff Kingsbury wants Kyler Murray to do. But what Kevin Stefanski wants Baker Mayfield to do is hand the ball off, to run the ball, jam the ball down the throat of the Cardinals, to try to potentially tire them out and win the game that way. And that's an alright game strategy. That's actually a great fucking strategy because the Browns win so many games doing that. But understand that that does not mean greatness for fantasy football, so Baker Mayfield is going to be a sit for me. And obviously every single week you're going to be starting Kyler Murray. Next up, we got the Las Vegas Raiders going up against the Teddy Bridgewater and the Broncos. So in this game, I am very interested to see what the Raiders look like without John Gruden. What is this going to look like? Is the team going to be defeated because they lost their head coach? How is this going to work? Like, what is this going to look like? Because last week, because of all the things that came out about John Gruden, the Raiders just got rolled by the Bears, and I feel as though maybe that is why that ended up happening. So maybe now without John Gruden, they play much better and they look very solid up against the Broncos. Broncos. Now, again, I really have no insight into the locker room, right? I am not there, so I'm just making assumptions. Maybe I am assuming wrong. Maybe the Raiders are going to be 100% in this game because now Gruden is gone and they want to go ahead and beat the fuck out of the Broncos. That is entirely possible, but I want to kind of pump the brakes very heavily on a lot of the Raiders players this game to kind of just see how they play. Plus, the Broncos defense is tough, so that's not even really ideal for Derek Carr regardless. I do like Teddy Bridgewater in this game, though. Teddy Two Gloves is a very safe and reliable quarterback. The Raiders defense doesn't look anywhere near as good as it looked to begin the season, so I think that Teddy Bridgewater could have a solid shot to put up a decent game this week up against the Raiders. Again, probably not going to be a top 5 quarterback, but finishing anywhere from the range like quarterback 14 to 10 wouldn't surprise me at all for Teddy Two Gloves in this matchup up against the Raiders. Next up, we got the Dallas Cowboys at the New England Deflatriots. Mac Jones is just severely unreliable for fantasy football. The thing is, the Patriots are also doing the same thing that the Bears are doing with Justin Fields, which is just, hey, let's make sure that Mac Jones doesn't fuck anything up. Let's make sure that Mac Jones doesn't have to air the ball out a million times. We're going to run the ball. We're going to do all these things to make sure that Mac Jones doesn't have to make any mistakes, and that's good and fine for the NFL, but it's not good for fantasy football. No way you want to be starting Mac Jones in this matchup, especially this week up against a tough Dallas Cowboys defense. So for the Cowboys, obviously, you're going to be firing up Mr. Dak Prescott, quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys. Dak Prescott has looked great thus far this season. It appears that the injury has not hampered him at all thus far this season. The Patriots defense is tough, but Dak has faced tougher defenses thus far this season. I think Dak Prescott is going to have a pretty solid game this week up against the Patriots. Next up, we got the Seattle Seahawks at the Pittsburgh Steelers on Sunday Night Football. Now, I understand people are going to throw virtual tomatoes at me through the fucking screen because I'm telling you to start Big Ben, but Big Ben looked good last week, and the Seattle Seahawks defense looks bad, so I think Big Ben could have a solid spot here, and I don't trust Geno Smith. Now, I do trust him in certain matchups, but going up against the Steelers defense, that is far from an ideal start for Geno Smith. Geno looked all right in that game, but then he did the typical Geno move, throwing a pick at the end of the game. So I think a lot of people are going to be very high on Geno Smith this week. They're going to try to talk themselves into it, but in reality, I think you should try to talk yourself out of starting Geno Smith because he is still Geno Smith. But Big Ben is worthy of a start this game. I like him up against the Seattle defense, and even without Mr. Corvette, the TikTok star himself, Juju Smith-Schuster, the Steelers offense will be just fine. Final game here, we got Monday Night Football between the Buffalo Bills at the Les Titans. In my must-start, must-sit players video, my must-sit quarterback was Ryan Tannehill, because while I think the Titans could be in this game, Ryan Tannehill hasn't played great, and the Bills' defense is amazing up against the pass via DVOA, so I don't really trust Ryan Tannehill at all in this game. He hasn't really played great this season. Now, I wouldn't just cut Ryan Tannehill or something, but I think this matchup up against the Bills is far from ideal, so I'm sitting down Mr. Tannehill, and I'm going to be starting up Josh Allen. Obviously, you're going to be firing up Josh Allen. This guy looks like he could be the MVP, the most valuable player in the NFL this season. This guy is playing out of his fucking mind. He hurdled a guy in the game up against the Chiefs. This is a guy that I love to watch play football. I love Josh Allen. I think he is in for a huge spot up against a bad Tennessee Titans defense. So thank you guys all so much for watching. If you did end up enjoying, make sure you do hit that subscribe button down below, as well as hitting that like button. I love you guys all so much. I hope you have a great rest of your guys' day, and as always, good boy.